So there's a sentiment I see on Twitter about the 2020 election in America. And what people are saying is, I think Trump has broken liberals' brains. And I think the sentiment in the UK is pretty similar in that I think Brexit has broken liberals' brains. And the sort of reforming of people like Tony Blair, but it goes to America with George Bush. Weren't these people so great? Now we have to choose between Boris Johnson, a real brazen, hysterical racist, and Jeremy Corbyn, pretty decent old man with some really good policies who was smeared into oblivion. So yay, Tony Blair, let's get Tony Blair back. Remember when Labour won elections? Well, I also sort of remember when Tony Blair helped start an illegal war which has led to the death of over 1 million people, if we want to bring up the good he did for the world. But lately, he's becoming more relevant by weighing in on the new Labour leadership contest. And recently, trans rights has been a big issue, which we've been talking about in the UK. Of course, it's another movement for social justice and change, which a lot of people on the Labour left are getting involved with, rightly so. But there's a lot of people in the centre who said, oh, who cares about trans rights? My constituents don't care about that. They care about, their wages. And this is the sentiment always used against people fighting for progressive change, whether that is civil rights for black people, for minorities, or for gay rights, and now for trans rights. So Tony Blair, I'm reading from Pink News, so Tony Blair has said that he would refuse to sign a trans rights pledge while warning Labour not to get involved in the cul-de-sac of identity politics. The 12 Points Pledge by Labour campaign for trans rights aims to challenge the growing anti-trans rhetoric in the party. It's been backed by Rebecca Long-Bailey and Lisa Nandy, two women running for the Labour leadership, but not Keir Starmer, the more centrist Blairite type guy. So the pledge states that there is no material conflict between trans rights and women's rights, and calls for the supporters of trans exclusionist hate groups to be expelled from Labour. That is pretty reasonable. Expel discriminatory groups from Labour. So the former Labour Prime Minister was speaking at King's College London to mark the 120th anniversary of Labour's foundation. I'm sure the founders of Labour would not be happy with Tony Blair. So he said in a speech about the future of the party, he said, leadership candidates should take a stand for things that are right. Oh, that's good. Even if they're not popular, including trans rights, but don't get involved in a culture war, he said. You've got to distinguish between the advocacy for certain things that are right, and you can say that whether it's gay rights or transgender rights or whatever it is, and launching yourself politically into some kind of culture war with the right. Because, as Tony Blair often did, he appeased the right wing. How did he get his lovely war in Iraq? He had to get all the Tories to vote for it as well as his own party. So if he says, if you go, transgender rights are our big thing, and the right says immigration control is our big thing, you are going to lose that war, so you are not going to advance any of the things you want to do. We don't need to be fighting that culture war. That doesn't mean you can't take the right position on things. But that sounds exactly what you're saying. You said because the right are bigots who hate immigrants and want more immigration control, you saying let's be pro-equality for everyone, including transgender people, is a losing argument because why? But still take a stand for things that are right, but maybe don't talk about trans rights because you'll lose the argument with the right. Let's be clear, the right wing don't just hate minorities, they hate gay people and they hate trans people. We're never going to win an argument with them on that. We just have to push ahead. People like Harold Wilson, the Prime Minister in the 60s, people who push for more equality around Britain, people, a guy who helped decriminalise being gay in this country. Do you think that was a popular position in the country? For a white guy from Huddersfield, do you think that was popular for him to do? No, but it was what was right. The same with Harold Wilson talking about, young people's culture and the Beatles. He was doing that to appeal to young people who couldn't even vote. Because when you're principled, when you're trying to reach out to people and be a decent person, you don't consider, but maybe the right wing will bring up some xenophobic immigration arguments so I can't talk about trans rights anymore. So Blair also added that Long Bailey and Starmer are significant improvements on Corbyn. Now, of course, Blair never liked Corbyn. Corbyn who constantly undermined him. Corbyn who made a great speech against the Iraq war. But these are the centrists, right? These are the people in America and the UK. They say you should be for equality. You should be for social progress, social justice. Of course, I'm for gay rights, I'm for women's rights, I'm for trans rights. Of course I am. But maybe don't bring it up, and I won't pledge myself to fight for them and hopefully exclude people who hate trans people from the party. Again, I don't understand this logic. And the culture war thing, no, it's just standing up for what is right. People have used this argument forever. Do you not think, Democrats would say that to Lyndon Johnson? Taking on this race issue, it's too much. You don't need to do this. You don't need to pass civil rights. It will be a culture war with the right. Do you think people didn't say that to people like Harold Wilson? Do you think people didn't say that when issues like gay marriage were passed in this country? And people will say, oh, well, David Cameron was the Prime Minister. Well, of course, who were the people who voted against that? It was Conservatives. He just did it as a token thing to sort of throw in people's face, like, look what I did. And that's what he did when he resigned. He was like, yeah, I'm so happy I passed gay rights. When he was, his party are bigoted. Boris Johnson, his best pal, notorious homophobe. But again, this is the centrist dilemma. I can pretend I'm for equality, and maybe deep down I do believe in this, but I'm not prepared to fight for it because what I really care about is power and appealing to the right. So when they talk about immigration control, we can't talk about immigration ourselves. We can't have that debate just on its own. If we talk about trans rights, that somehow undermines the rest of our platform. I don't understand it. The view of socialists and the Labour Party, the good people in the Labour Party, is that we should create a society that works for everyone. People in the Labour Party say this, people in the Democratic Party say this, the good people on the left say this, the progressives. And that includes passing laws that stop people getting discriminated against for who they are, whether they are from a minority, religious or ethnic, whether they're from any group in LGBTQ+. And it's not popular. It's never going to be popular. Think of all the people in history who have fought for social change. Many people who have died, like Harvey Milk and Martin Luther King. Were they popular in their times? They were revered by many, but popular as a whole? Definitely not. We have this view now that they're very popular, but they weren't. People hated them. Gandhi as well. People who were radical and pushing for this change, they were loathed at the time, but they also inspired people, and that's why their legacy lives on, because when we as a society eventually catch up and we realise how backwards people were, that's when these people get revered, and a lot of the time their radicalism gets really neutered. Like Martin Luther King was a radical socialist, right? He compared the Americans' actions in Vietnam to that of the Nazis in World War II. Now, every Republican, even racist ones, including Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, come out and celebrate Martin Luther King Day. People he would have hated, if he was around today, they would have hated, but that's what happens. Because you've got to do what is right at the end of the day, because that is how society moves forward. You don't take into consideration the views of the bigots. The Freedom Riders didn't be like, we can't, really push this issue in people's faces because we might lose the debate on immigration in America. That is not how it works. So this is total garbage, and again, the centrist problem. Pretending you have the moral high ground without actually doing anything to either secure it or further it. And it's just really frustrating that this guy is even relevant. Again, Iraq War. People say, oh, get over the Iraq War. I'm pretty sure a lot of people who live in Iraq can't get over it since it killed many of their family members and then destroyed their whole country, which is still having effects today. Almost, 17 years later? So we can't forget that, Tony Blair, and you went along with it and basically ruined the Labour Party. That's what the Tories always threw in your face. You started all these wars. You went along with this. British soldiers are dead before you because of you. And Tony Blair, you might not sign the pledge to fight for trans rights in the Labour Party, but you also didn't sign I will not illegally invade Iraq and kill thousands of Arab people pledge, did you? So you're just a total mess, and I just wished you'd fade into the background and stop being relevant. Yeah, you won some elections back in the day. You completely destroyed your legacy by your awful foreign policy. And people are not going to get over that. Also, you started the privatisation of the NHS and you started tuition fees for university. So let's just remember Tony Blair's legacy before we start trying to give him any benefit of the doubt. And let's not make any mistake. We have numerous fights throughout history for people to be equal, whether that is racism, whether that is gay or trans rights, and that still exists today. And there's always going to be people, even in the middle, who are going to hold you back. And you got to be at the forefront of these movements to push it, and it's not going to be, an easy ride. But think of all the progress in my lifetime, specifically on gay rights. It's not perfect, but that's how much it changes, doesn't it? How much it becomes accepted by a lot of people. And that's what you've got to do. And you've got to keep fighting and not get complacent, which we see with racism. People like Lawrence Fox, Boris Johnson say, oh, we're not a racist country. But then, look who we put in charge. Look what we give into with Brexit. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please like and subscribe. Follow me on social media at The Cavanacle. Pretty much on everything. On Reddit, my subreddit is r/thecavaнаcle. My personal Reddit is u/TommyKO1995. Please check out my Patreon and WordPress. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.